Hong Kong have qualified for the Rugby World Cup. We have our latest qualifier. We have a new team qualifying for the Rugby World Cup for the first time since Chile 4 years ago. How are we feeling? I'm very excited to have a new team in here.
Super, super excited. I think Hong Kong have been the sort of team that have not only been winning games like enough times to justify this for a number of years, but they've been playing such an entertaining brand of rugby for the longest time. It's the level below the World Cup, you know, that they have been playing against a lot of sort of emerging nations, let's call them, and they have been ripping them apart in such entertaining fashion. And the thought of seeing that on the world stage is the best.
Yeah. The story has become a little bit like Japan in the 90s and early noughties, in that they are so much better than the other Asian teams they're playing regularly. And they've started really competing with the, lower qualifiers from the World Cup seeding, right? The likes of Namibia, Romania and so on. Like, we've started to see them put in good performances against a lot of these teams. And last autumn, I thought they were really strong. Playing a lot of these games against the likes of, Zimbabwe and so on, and getting Brazil, and were superb fun.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited to see them get their chance now. And they ripped through Asian qualifying. They beat South Korea 70-22 in order to qualify, and they've been broadly winning every game like that over qualifying over the last few weeks.
Yeah, I think you're right to bring up the test series they did with Brazil last autumn was so good, so entertaining, and you got to see the highlights of what their backline looks like. However, the game against South Korea at the weekend was, you got to see the all-round game a little bit more. You got to see the kicking game, which is really, really important. They've got Nathan Detere at 10 is one of the focal points of this team. He's a superstar. He's got such a broad range of kicks on him. He's so good kicking for length. And more importantly, or more entertainingly, his little dinks and his cross-field kicks, chips in behind.
Game really nicely.
Yeah, and he is such an unpredictable player, and his body language is something that's so, so hard to look at. You look at that kind of the likes of, we've talked about Sam Prendergast a lot, likes of kind of Richie Mo'unga or Holly Aitchison, like the sort of 10 who... No, but the sort of 10 who... is really good at just disguising what he's going to do or she's going to do at all times. And Detere really, really slots into that.
Jack Coombs at scrum half had a very good game as well. Just really lively, very alert, always looking around. But then you've got the back line, right? And we talked about them a bit when we talked about them last year in the autumn. But they have been on fire. And there is these real standouts in this team. The king amongst them, King Matt Worley, the king of Bedford.
What a player.
Who has been toiling with the championship for years. Then every now and again he gets a break from the I assume championship rugby is just you go out, you score loads of tries, you miss a tackle on Dean Adamson, then you put out a joint statement, because that's what the championship clubs seem to be doing most of the time, because there's so many joint statements coming out for the championship clubs. So he's taking a break from putting out joint statements against the RFU and going, Bill Swing, he gives a tenner, please, my children are starving. And he goes out every now and again, and he goes and plays for Hong Kong, and he becomes the greatest player you've ever seen. And he plays a bunch on the wing. He's been playing fullback lately. Scored a couple of brilliant tries a few weeks ago. Scored another stunner in the first few minutes of the weekend. And is a player I'm so excited to see at World Cup, because he is lightning quick, instinct superb, and just knows how to score tries.
He's the sort of player, I'd imagine, if he wasn't tied down to Hong Kong, i.e. not England, he would have a contract in the Premiership. He would be playing regular rugby at Prem level, because he is lightning fast. And as you say, his awareness of what's going on all around him and his cover in the backfield are superb. That you say, he's the sort of winger who plays at fullback. He's kind of a winger by trade, but is so good that you want him more involved, so you put him at fullback a little bit more. However, the rest of his skill set is just as good, because he's a really good passer of the ball, especially when he gets broken field, and also his kicking game is superb. And as you say, he's a proper Chris Ashton style winger who, when he gets space, just has finishing instinct, and his support lines are absolutely outstanding. He's such an entertaining player to watch, and I think he's probably the player in this team that I'm most excited to see play at top level, because again, I'm certain he would be able to punch at that level. And the thought of, we obviously don't know yet who Hong Kong will be drawn with. I presume they're going to win the World Cup. However, we don't know what their path to that is going to be. But if they are drawn against, an Australia, a South Africa, a New Zealand, right? Even a France, an England, whoever, right? I love the thought of seeing this guy get a broken field against those, because even if you're one of the best teams in the world, at some point in an 80-minute game of rugby, you will switch off. It's just the nature of the game.
Yeah.
And he thrives in those scenarios.
Or, if they draw off Wales, scoring a hat-trick in the game. Paul Artra as well, other winger playing in the Fédérale Lyon in France. Great, again, some great touches at the weekend. And you then look at the centres, right? And we have two like really cool stories. You have Ben Exton-Burrett, who is the best Barrett in rugby.
Yeah.
I know he's Burrett, but like I shall continue with
Close
this.
enough.
He is better than Geordie, Scott, Bowden, or Brad.
Yes.
The brothers. He is the strongest B_Rit in rugby. 13, really classy, really enjoy watching him play. Sort of like...
So balanced.
I'm going to throw Adam Ashley Cooper out there as a comparison point.
Oh, that's strong. It's strong,
yeah.
but I'll take it. I would say,
Obviously
I
a much
would
better
lean, again, looking at the Asian kind of like route of rugby, there's something of the Timothy Lafaeli about him in terms of the way that he can offload the ball, the way he's running in open space as well. But maybe a cross between those two players, because they're very different players we've just named.
Then Tom Hill at 12, vice-captain, who 4 years ago, before the last qualifying competition in the USA, said against the USA, said that this is my last chance at the World Cup and it's my all-time dream. Is Australian-born, grew up dreaming of playing for the Wallabies, was Hong Kong qualified, went and played for Hong Kong, but his dream was playing a Rugby World Cup. That was like it. That was like the thing he always wanted to do. And he said, 4 years ago, this is my last shot. I won't make it. There's some kids in this team who may go on and get there in 4 years' time, but this is it for me. And like he used the words, "This is it for me" before the game. And now he's getting his shot. He's going to get to achieve his childhood dream playing in the World Cup.
You would imagine, regardless of how well he plays in the World Cup or how well Hong Kong do, he will kind of be the story. You think he'll be like the Mike Tadger of this group kind of thing, of the talisman who then moves on after the lifelong dream of getting to play at the high level.
He's 35 now. I think he'll be 37 at the World Cup, maybe even 38.
Yeah. Going back to the game against South Korea, as I say, the kicking game and Theory was one thing that we kind of really saw in that. But the other thing was what they've got up front.
Yeah.
So the scrum is something that really, really impresses me about Hong Kong, especially at this level. And again, I suppose the Asian qualification, the scrum isn't always the strongest area for a lot of those teams. So they may struggle if they come up against South Africa or England.
You don't think?
Yeah. However, really, really impressed with. So you've got Ben Higgins on the loose head, you've got Cinnamon on the tight head, and in the centre of it all, Alex Post playing hooker.
Yeah.
Again, can fit into the rugby terminology 15.
Yep.
However, both at the back of mauls, in the middle of the scrum, all the grunty work he's really, really good at. But also, he sometimes works as an edge forward. You look at this try that he sets up here, where he takes the cross kick from Deterri on the wing, feeds it back inside, and Matt Worley actually gets an apology for not getting a pass at the end of this. And they finish it superbly. But his awareness on the edge and also just his general skill set are really, really good. And I just think he's going to be a really entertaining player at the World Cup.
Yeah, and there is another angle on this as well that we haven't mentioned, but it's a very on-brand thing to bring up, right? They've brought in someone over the last few weeks as a coaching consultant to help in their qualifying campaign and hopefully beyond this. They've brought in Toby Booth.
They have.
Who left the Ospreys in December last year.
They've already found a way.
And they've already found a way into the World Cup. And obviously, great kind of pack tactician, Toby Booth. But his overall thing is developing young players and squad morale and building teams, right? And building them often around young players. And obviously, a lot of this Hong Kong team are slightly older. A lot of them are in their mid-30s. Or, like Worley's 27. Like, there's a few of those in there. But there aren't really many, young, sparky, young talents. I think Max Denmark's probably the one standout. He's like 24, 25, who scored a very nice try at the weekend.
He's superb. He looks really, really strong.
Something's Max in the state of Denmark. And I do think it's a perfect fit. And I think he'll be very, very good for this team and building them into something more and helping them overperform. Because typically you look at teams he's coached, they've all overperformed expectations. So that's really exciting, him coming in. Obviously, as a consultant, he's not the head coach. You don't want to, drop too much credit on him because his team has been built by a really smart team of coaches throughout the last few years. But we now have a situation where this team are qualified for a World Cup, the second ever Asian team to make a World Cup after Japan. And they will be dreaming of going even further.
Yeah.
And I wonder, there are probably quite a few other players with links to Hong Kong out there who may be able to declare, may be able to come in over the next year or so. May they be able to add to this roster? And will they going forward? Will this lead to a bit more of an investment in Hong Kong rugby? There was already, I thought it was fantastic. You look at a couple of Hong Kong newspapers, one of them had a rugby section already, right? And it was the odd match report. And then they've put up 6 articles since the weekend, since they qualified.
Wow.
And they've gone from like they've put out more rugby stories this weekend than they did last year in total. So
That's potentially huge.
yeah,
And
like
you look
just
at
put the sport on the map a bit.
another team who are looking very good for qualification for the first time in decades is Zimbabwe. And they have plucked out players who were born in Zimbabwe and managed to convince them to come over, particularly players who are towards the end of their careers. And as you say, like Hong Kong will have more links to kind of obscure-ish rugby players who received caps 5 years ago, than you would expect. I don't know who those are. However, there is definitely somebody whose job it is to seek these players out, find players who have played internationally or played at professional level in, let's say, the top 3 leagues in France, the top 2 in England, in Super Rugby or the feeder competitions to that. It will be somebody's job to find those players and just send out the emails and go, do you want to go to a World Cup, mate? Because we can sort you out. And that is something that's so appetising.
One angle on that, though, is one of those articles in the Hong Kong newspaper was about the fact that they had all of the wider staff from the Hong Kong Rugby Union, including the team analysts and stuff, who weren't directly involved in match day, which was basically just 3 coaches and the 23 that were playing on the day. Everyone else went and watched it in a bar in Hong Kong, which I thought was great. And so there may be a smaller budget at play than you'd expect from maybe England in terms of hunting those players out. But again, you look at Hill and that dream of playing in a World Cup, and that'll be so big for a number of players, or another World Cup for a handful maybe.
Yeah.
So we don't want to focus too much on that because there's a group of players here that have achieved something incredible.
Absolutely.
They have achieved a dream here, and I'm excited by that. You do mention African qualifying. That starts this weekend. So we'll have another team in there in 3 weekends' time. So first round will be fine. They all look like fairly reasonably foregone conclusions. You then have Namibia have got themselves, and they did this last time as well. Namibia have gotten the easy side of the draw, so they'll make it to the final. And then you'll have Kenya v Zimbabwe potentially weekend after next. Which will decide then one of those will play Namibia for a place in the
That's probably
World
the
Cup.
big game of this African qualifier because you say, Zimbabwe start off against Morocco. You'd imagine they'll blow them away, and that will be the kind of the training run in a sense that they need going into the Kenya game. But Kenya are a team that play at pace, and it is a question of whether they can match the physicality of Zimbabwe, as well as obviously they're a team who play extremely expansively. And I think it's a real litmus test for where Zimbabwe are at, of can they kind of show the all-round kind of breadth of game that they have developed in the last year. Of course, went unbeaten in 2024. So the question is, can they build on that and get that crucial win over Namibia? I
would love it.
I quite fancy them.
I think it's very possible. I think this is their best ever shot.
Yeah.
The Namibia team is missing a lot of the big names that you're used to. Both, Cleveland Laubs is there. You've got, Prince Galseb.
Prince Galseb,
is captain now. But otherwise, a lot of the names that went to the last couple of Wayne van der Bank's there. But a lot of the names that have gone to the last few World Cups have either retired or are absent for this campaign. So I think there's a genuine chance to knock them over, which will be exciting. I want to do lots more World Cup qualifying over the next few weeks. We have America's qualifying, kicks off in a couple of weeks' time. I think there's another 2 weeks before that gets going. So it's all happening. We are moving towards filling out the 24 spots. They want them done before the draw is done in November. So all of this is taking place this year rather than the 12 months beforehand it's happened in past World Cups. So we're getting very close to a World Cup, and it begins to take shape thanks to the addition of Hong Kong.
Yeah, I'm so excited to just cheer for them against some of the bigger teams that they'll play against, or the more established teams.
Even if they play someone like Uruguay, right? That'd be great fun.
Yeah. And as I say, hopefully we're giving you a bit of a sprinkling on what to expect from Hong Kong's style of play. However, on the bigger stage, I would just love it if they did say what Portugal did in the last World Cup, and they go, look, we are not going to go into our shell just because these guys are better defensively than what we're used to playing at qualifying level or in other leagues we usually play in.
I think Chile is the comparison point. I think they've got a very good chance of doing what Chile did and just going out and giving it a lash and scoring some brilliant tries and really being an entertaining team that people love to watch, even if they're not necessarily winning games in the way Portugal managed to beat Fiji.
Yeah, you think about Rodrigo Fernandez had a really good World Cup in 23, and he was kind of the star player, and there was a bit of sort of light pressure on him to have a good World Cup, because he was the Chilean name, certainly in the backline that people were entertained by. And I think the comparison point that we're giving at this point, obviously there's a long way to go until the World Cup itself, but is somebody like an Axton Burrett who could potentially, break some lines and set up some tries, and Matt Worley once again, that if he can if he can do what he does at the level he does at the moment, right, all it takes is half a gap to appear against a bigger team and he can do exactly the same. He, honestly, like, the level of gas that guy has and the sheer acceleration and agility, like, he can do that against everybody. So I'm so excited to see how these guys get on.
A very farty boy. Chile were...
Rowan Farty.
Nice. They're great. They're GOAT. No, Chile was superb at the weekend as well. A quick note, like Fernandes had a good game as well. So yeah, no, they were great. Yeah, comprehensively beat a Romania team who've been very strong over the last year. So we're not getting a chance to talk about it, but I just wanted to mention it. My boys.
Up the boys.
Superb.
Yeah.
So Hong Kong in the World Cup. Chile could make it in the next few weeks. We will round up those spots and we'll do plenty more as we head into this because it's one of my favourite times of the World Cup cycle is the qualifying, is seeing which new teams can get in. And we have the first of those locked in now.